Greetings, wizards. It's Balthazar, and today I'm going to share something that develops on the idea that I shared with you in the previous video regarding using the Key of Solomon in a candle magic style. Now this spell builds on that, and we will develop some of the ideas in that spell a little bit further by incorporating some sympathetic magic. And in particular, we'll be working with the very famous hoodoo honey jar spell. It's a form of sweetening work, a form of sympathetic magic that is intended to sweeten someone to you, to change their attitude, to make them like you, to get them to be warmer and nicer to you, and to love you in the context of a love spell, of course. So we're going to be integrating this form of sympathetic magic from the hoodoo tradition into this rite of Solomonic candle magic. So you will need to go back to that video. I'll link it down below. Have a look at that first, because the ideas in that video are foundational for this spell. And I won't be covering everything that I covered in that video again, because I don't want to be repeating myself too much. But that is necessary to understand this spell. We will be incorporating spirit work, which is to say the evocation or the invocation of the power of spirits into the spell work with a form of traditional sympathetic magic, the honey jar spell, of course, right? And the reason that this is great, if you've ever worked with honey jar, it's a very reliable form of spell work. It's a very effective form of spell work, but it takes time. You need to commit a lot of time and energy to it over the long run. You don't necessarily see results immediately. You need to be burning candles on that sweetening spell at least 3 times a week, and then gradually you will start seeing that impact on the person who you are intending to influence with this spell. There are exceptions where the spell work goes quickly, and there are little tricks that you can do to speed up a honey jar. But generally speaking, it's a form of spell work that requires consistency before you start seeing results. Now, one of the great things about incorporating spirits into this kind of magical work is that they do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. They can really speed up that work, and this is one of the main reasons magicians really invoke or evoke spirits to begin with. They can do a lot more than you can do by yourself using just the power of the botanicals, the virtue, the magical virtue that are in the herbs, and the candles and the prayers, the psalms, and of course your faith when you're praying over that. Now you have an additional power, the power of the spirits. So this system of magic that I'll be sharing on this channel is really a form of magic that is very spirit-centric and aims to especially work with Solomonic spirits that are found in this case in the greater Key of Solomon. What you will need for this spell, and we will be doing a love spell honey jar, something to attract a lover into your life, or a particular person in this case, and to have them sweeten up to you, to be romantically drawn to you and fall in love with you, hopefully, if it goes well. So what you will need for this is the following, right? You will need what I'm referring to as the tablet of lights. That's this ceramic plate upon which you will be engraving the first pentacle of Venus, which is the spirit pentacle that controls the spirits, as you would have known from the previous video. Secondly, you will need the 5th pentacle of Venus from the greater key, and I will go into that in a bit. Of course, you will need the Key of Solomon itself. That's going to be handy here. You will need a picture of the person who you intend to attract. Naturally, since it's a honey jar spell, you will need a jar of honey. Something with a metal lid is preferable. As it happened, I was able to find a green jarred lid, and the spell, the planetary rulership for this spell is a Venus. And in the Key of Solomon, Venus takes the color green. So we want to color correspond everything with green. So it's lucky that this has got a green lid. I just happened to work out that way. But you know, any other plain colored lid, like a white or black lid or whatever the case may be, would work. And you want to take the labels off in that for aesthetic reasons and for magical reasons. You want this to be a blank slate, as it were, filled with honey, right? Then we've got some Venusian herbs that we will be using in this spell. We will be using myrtle, we will be using rose, we will be using red clover. Now, in the traditional Solomonic context, or in grimoire magic correspondences, these are all herbs of Venus that allows us to bring in a planetary correspondence of Venus that will allow us to attune the spirits of Venus to the spell very effectively. But happily, it so happens that in African American hoodoo, these three herbs are also very much celebrated, love drawing herbs. And it's not surprising, there are some Western magical herbal influences that percolated into African American conjure. So that's no surprise there. Then you will need some myrrh incense. And I suggest, because firstly myrrh is rules Venus, or sorry, is ruled by Venus. It's a very strong smell, and you might want to blend it with some frankincense. And you can also add some myrtle to that. Myrtle works well as an incense. It does have a perfumed quality, right? You're going to need a censer for that and a charcoal disc. Then also we will be needing some oils of planetary correspondence. A Venus oil is very handy. And in this case, I formulated an Archangel of Venus oil. This is an Anael oil that I formulated. And in the PDF that is included with this video, I will teach you how to formulate your own Archangel oils using the method that I used here. But basically, this is a planetary oil, but it's got an angelic twist to it, right? So that's going to be planetary correspondence in the oil. And then holy anointing oil is another good alternative here to use. That's certainly very powerful in Solomonic work. You will need 5 green candles. You will need some liquid chalk and something to write with, obviously. Now the liquid chalk preferably will be a green liquid chalk marker. In this instance, I opted for black here on this with this pentacle, and for the simple reason that the green liquid chalk marker I have was of such a light color that it wasn't showing up on camera, and I wanted you to be able to see what was happening in the spell. So just keep that in mind. Having said that, it's perfectly fine to use a black liquid chalk marker if that's all that you got and all that you can afford, as long as everything else is color correspondent, as long as you've got your green candles and whatever the case may be, you've made sure that your pentacle has been colored green. And the pentacle, of course, as I discussed before in another little video, you will have printed this in the hour of Venus and colored it in the hour of Venus, or printed it on green paper in the hour of Venus, or whatever the case may be, and that's to imbue it with the Venusian qualities again. Now what I like to do is I like to do this in the hour that I do the work, so that's one of the reasons that I favor printing the pentacle and then coloring it myself, or printing it on colored paper, because I can do it all in one go. When the hour of Venus arrives, I print the pentacle, I get everything together, and I draw this pentacle in the hour of Venus too, and then I do the work in the hour, and it's all done in one shot. So that's my preference right there. Then you will need a picture of your target, the person who you intend to influence, and if you have any personal concerns and a trace of some sort, some hair, fingernails, a piece of clothing, whatever the case may be, it would be great to include it here. That also, but of course, just working with the image alone will be suitable also. Something to engrave the candle, the main candle with. I use an engraving pen. This is, I think it's called a burin, and you can get this at an art shop. Some people use nails, some people use pins. I like an engraving pen because it's easier to work with. You can consecrate it and use it for your magical work. And of course you can engrave metal with this too, which is very handy in a Solomonic context. So I think that's it for the ingredients. Now we're ready to begin the work. So before we get into it, I want to read to you about the quality of the 5th pentacle of Venus. And the Key of Solomon says, "When it is only showed unto any person whatsoever, it inciteth and exciteth wonderfully unto love." In other words, if you show this to someone, it will make them fall in love with you. Super, that's great. Now, we're not going to literally show this pentacle to the target, but we are going to symbolically do so, because we're going to take the pentacle, right? We're going to write the petition on the back, and I've opted for the very traditional way of doing this in hoodoo, which is to cover and cross the name, and then in cursive surround that with my command. If you want to learn more about how to write traditional hoodoo papers, Miss Kat Ironwood has got a really nice book out on this. I'll link it down below, you might want to check it out. We then take the seal, and we're going to take the picture of the target, and before we carry on any further, we're going to dress the seal with some archangel oil in the four corners and in the center, forming a quincunx. You can address the picture of our target. And we are going to have him look at the seal. We're going to put the target's face to the seal so that he is looking at it and is incited wonderfully to love in this sense, right? So we're having them kiss the seal and the figure kiss together. And what I like to do here is to take a little bit of the honey, taste it to get that sweetness in my mouth, so that he can be sweet to me as I'm to him. Then I will put some of the honey on his mouth and on his head, and then I will use that to kind of stick him to the seal so that he's facing that seal, so that he can look at it. Right. Good. Now, what I also want to say here is that with this spell, it is very good to do all the preliminary consecrations first. In the previous video, you will see that the spell's got two parts. There are the preliminary consecrations. All these consecrations are drawn from the greater key, and you do them on the materials, and then before you do the physical spell. And usually you can, with the candle spell that I showed before, you can do it in one go. But in this case, for it to be more elegant, I want you to start with all the preliminary consecrations first, which is what I've already done. So I did the preliminary consecrations on the tablet. I did the preliminary consecrations on the herbs, the incense, and the candles, and the honey jar, and I would have kindled the fire and did the exorcism of the fire also, right? And then everything is ready to go into the spell because we're now combining it with sympathetic magic. And the thing that is interesting about this is you will find the qualities of sympathy, using sweetness, sweet things like honey, which Agrippa actually does attribute to Venus, which is another nice, elegant bit of symbolism that dovetails very nicely with African American conjure. But one of the nice things about using sympathetic magic along with spirit work is that sympathetic magic or using sympathetic processes like sweetening, cutting, tearing, tying, all those kinds of things that we do to symbolically enact our magical intentions, these things also structure and program the spirits. It's like these sympathies, the laws of sympathy are the language of the spirits. So they really understand these things, and the spirits really react well to this kind of inclusion into a spell. So you will then want to take a pinch of the myrtle, pinch of the red clover, some of that rose, all these wonderful love herbs, and you will want to put them onto the seal over the picture that is facing the seal. And then as you fold this seal towards yourself to form a kind of packet there to hold the herbs, you will be saying your petition that you are drawing your target, that your target falls wonderfully in love with you, that they are sweetened to you in thought, in word and deed, all these kinds of things. Right? And then when you've finished folding this packet, you take that honey jar, place it in the center there, and I've already made some space in the jar, but if there isn't a space, it's a good idea to take a scoop of that and make some space by eating it so you can get that sweetness in your mouth, and that the power of the honey then is very visceral and strong in the magic. And then you push that packet down deep into the honey, and then yummy. Then we'll take your black marker, and I already drew the pentacle to save some time in this video, the pentacle of the spirits of Venus on the tablet, but I'm going to draw the sigil of the archangel, which in this case is Anael, which rules these spirits on the lid here, like so. Now we've got a lit candle, and it's always handy to keep a lit candle here, because obviously you can dress this candle with some holy anointing oil, and this will be the divine light that you want to be keeping in this process of making the spell. You want to have that symbolism of light there already, but it serves another very practical purpose, and I use it to drip the wax to set the candles. But before I do so, I'm going to first dress the candles with angel oil, or if you're using well-formulated planetary oil, any well-formulated planetary oil is good, provided that it's got genuine planetary herbal correspondences. You can use that. And I'm going to set, as before, I'm going to set a candle on each of the 4 angels written around the perimeter of the pentacle. And then lastly, we will inscribe the holy name that rules the sphere of Venus and the archangel and all these spirits. We will inscribe that name using whatever you'll be using to inscribe it. You will carve that into the candle. You will set that atop the sigil of the archangel, Anael in this case, angel of Venus. There you go, now you're ready. And once this has been set, you are ready to perform the second half of this spell, which is follows exactly the same format as in the Solomonic candle magic video. So you would first begin by burning some planetary incense, invoking the holy name that rules the sphere. You would light the central candle, invoking the archangel, and then you would light the 4 candles around the central candle in the name and the authority of the archangel, right? And then you would then say your petition to the angels by giving more incense to them with a thanks and offering, saying that you would like this person to come to you. You can recite the appropriate psalms. You love psalms, and in particular the versicle of the psalm that is written around the pentacle that you put in the jar. Each of those pentacles has got a psalm traditionally associated with it, and a verse of that psalm that's inscribed around the pentacle, and that is perfect for reciting for your psalm magical needs. In this instance, recite that psalm. Whatever the case may be, you then leave these to burn down, and then when they finished burning down, you return back to this setup and you say a brief dismissal. The spirit's also included in that PDF, and then you can return to this every day for the first week or so and light a candle in the hour of Venus on the honey jar. Only on the honey jar is that necessary. And again, invoking the archangel when you do so. And then after that, you could do so every Friday in the hour of Venus, to keep that jar going until you see the result you want, until your lover has come to you and you are satisfied with what you got there. So as you can see, you can incorporate sympathetic magical processes like a honey jar into this form of Solomonic candle magic with relative ease, and as long as you keep in mind some principles that you want to dovetail the ingredients in an intelligent way. You want the herbal correspondences to be of planetary association. You want to make sure that the colors are there, and you want to make sure that the components and so on are in harmony and in sympathy with not only your goal but also the planet, because this will be forming the language of the spirits, as it were. I've created a PDF that includes this entire spell, including the preliminary consecrations, additional herbal correspondences, and additional ideas for things that you can include into this spell that will make it more powerful, that will give it a bit more kick. And in addition to that, I've included a method for formulating an archangel oil, right? And in this instance, it will be for formulating an archangel anal oil, which is a form of planetary oil with an angelic energy, which is very important in this kind of magic. It will give you not only the planetary correspondence there, but some of the power of the angel and the authority of the angel in the work that you do. So there's a section in there that teaches you how to make this oil for yourself, and you can adapt it to any of the planets so that you could use it for any of the archangels. Along with that, you will find all the invocations for the angels and so on, everything that you need to do the spell from beginning to end. That will be linked down below. So in this video, we learned how to incorporate a honey jar spell with Solomonic spirit work. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you find these ideas useful. If you did, please like or share this video or leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Remember to subscribe, and thank you for watching.